The quiet room suddenly formed a strange invisible fluctuation the moment Xiao Yan opened his eyes. This ripple slowly spread. Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air as his hands suddenly moved. Numerous strange hand seals appeared. His hands danced and even formed after-images. Following the changes of his hand seals, an invisible spiritual strength began to agglomerate on his palm in a lightning-like manner. Within the blink of an eye, it formed an invisible palm print. Xiao Yan flicked his finger the moment the palm print was formed, and it scattered. Immediately, the seals formed by his hands continued to change. Soon after, two even more complicated palm prints appeared. 3 different palm prints appeared one after another in Xiao Yan's hands with great perfection. One could not find any flaws during the formation of the seals. This degree of familiarity was not weaker than what Chao Ying had displayed back then. The 3 spiritual prints surfaced before they were scattered by Xiao Yan. A mouthful of turbid air was also spat out of his mouth. A faint fluorescent light was lifted on Xiao Yan's face as the turbid air was spat out. It appeared just like warm jade before swiftly disappearing. His body moved, and he leaped down from the bed, after which his body stood erect on the ground with his eyes shut. Xiao Yan shut his eyes for a moment before suddenly opening them. There was a faint joy within his eyes because he had discovered that the spiritual aura permeating his soul had become fuller than before without him realizing it. He could even vaguely sense a slight clogging feeling within his soul. Could this be that soul state barrier? Xiao Yan pondered the thought. His intuition told him that the moment he passed through this clogging feeling, his soul would definitely step into the so-called soul state. At that time, he would finally become a true alchemist guru. It's soon. A smile surfaced on Xiao Yan's face. Based on this level, he had the confidence to truly break through the barrier. Xiao Yan smiled in his heart and arranged his clothes. After which, he pushed the door and exited the room. His gaze swept around and arrived on the little fairy doctor, who was seated cross-legged outside of his door. Due to what had occurred before, she had become afraid of being too far from Xiao Yan. Even though they were in the pill tower, she continued to remain guard in this place when Xiao Yan entered his training state. The little fairy doctor swiftly opened her eyes when Xiao Yan pushed open the door. She turned her head and only sighed in relief after seeing that it was Xiao Yan. After which, she asked with a soft smile, "Are you done training?" "Yes, it has been tough on you." Xiao Yan grinned. He was naturally aware just how many days the little fairy doctor had guarded him. "If you really wish to thank me, just these few words alone are not enough." The little fairy doctor sweetly smiled. However, she appeared to have sensed a deeper meaning in her words, causing her pretty face to turn slightly red. She hurriedly changed the conversation topic and said, "It has been a few days since you undertook your retreat. Chao Ying has come and looked for you once during this period of time, but I stopped her. You won't blame me for interrupting this great thing of yours, will you?" The little fairy doctor rolled her bright eyes when she finished to speak. They finally paused on Xiao Yan's face. Xiao Yan involuntarily let out a bitter laugh when he heard the news. He said, "I am not on familiar terms with her. What great thing can we have? Moreover, that woman is also not an ordinary person. I do not wish to be close to her." The little fairy doctor nodded in satisfaction after hearing Xiao Yan put it this way. She curled her pretty eyes until they formed a crescent shape. "When will the pill gathering begin?" Xiao Yan's eyes swept over the large hall as he randomly asked. "Tomorrow." So soon? Xiao Yan was startled. It was unexpected that time had passed so quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was about time for the pill gathering to begin. "If you did not wake yourself up today, I would have entered and woken you up a little later," the little fairy doctor informed him with a smile. Xiao Yan tilted his head. He immediately frowned a little and said, "I still have one medicinal ingredient that I have yet to obtain. It looks like I will need to think of a way to get my hands on it today." Ever since Xiao Yan had obtained the 2 medicinal ingredients from the alchemist trade fair back then, he had yet to obtain any news about the last 10,000-year-old green spiritual vine until now. The pill gathering was fast approaching. This caused Xiao Yan to panic a little. After all, if he lacked this key ingredient, it would be impossible for him to truly refine the medicinal pill. KK, there is no need for you to worry about medicinal ingredients. The door of the hall was suddenly pushed open while Xiao Yan was frowning. Immediately, Ye Zhong, Xin Lan, and Tianhuo Zunjie walked in. Ye Zhong smiled as he walked to Xiao Yan's side. He flicked his hand, and a couple of jade boxes with cold air seeping from them appeared on the table in front of him. He said, "There are 2 10,000-year-old green spiritual vine and a blood essence demon fruit here. Adding them to the medicinal ingredients you already have, you will coincidentally have 2 full sets. Even if you fail once during the refinement, you will still have a second chance." Xiao Yan was startled when he heard this. He hurriedly grabbed a jade box and opened its cover. He did indeed see a jade-green emerald-like tree branch lying inside it. Dense life force spread out from it, giving one a relaxed and happy feeling. "It is indeed the 10,000-year-old green spiritual vine. How did you obtain these things?" Xiao Yan's face revealed his joy before he immediately asked, somewhat uncertainly. These things were not ordinary items. Even with the collection of the Ye clan, the clan would not be able to take them out. However, there was suddenly 2 10,000-year-old green spiritual vine and 1 blood essence demon fruit. This was a little strange. "These were not obtained by us. All I did was mention to an elder from the pill tower that you needed these medicinal pills. They took the initiative to deliver these medicinal ingredients on the second day." Ye Zhong smiled as he explained what happened. Xiao Yan was startled. He immediately came to a sudden understanding. Xuan Kongzi's orders were behind all this. Otherwise, with his reputation, it was still too unknown for the pill tower to value him like this. Xiao Yan thanked Xuan Kongzi in his heart. He did not put up an act. He simply waved his hand and stored the medicinal ingredients in front of him into his storage ring. Currently, these were the most important things to him, and it was naturally impossible for him to reject them. He would treat it as owing Xuan Kongzi a favor, and he would return it when he had the chance to in the future. The number of people participating in this season's pill gathering will likely be the greatest number in all of its history. I heard that the inner region has been fully occupied by the countless numbers of competitors. Among them seem to be some renowned old demons. It seems that they are planning to thicken their skins and participate because of the 3,000 burning flame. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. He was already aware that this season's pill gathering would definitely not be easy. Even he did not hold the thought of taking the champion spot. After all, the difficulty of this was really too great. All he could do was try his best. However, if there is an opportunity, I really wish to fight with these great people from all over the continent. Teacher was a champion of one of the pill gatherings back then. Being his disciple, how can I diminish his reputation? Xiao Yan gently lifted the corner of his mouth. Some heat that was difficult to hide flashed across his dark black eyes. Regardless of how cool he was still a young person. The hot blood of a young person similarly flowed in Xiao Yan's veins. Ye Zhong and the others exchanged glances with each other upon seeing the smile on Xiao Yan's face, after which they grinned. It was likely that there would really be a good show with this season's pill gathering. Honestly speaking, they were really curious to know if this tiger, Xiao Yan, would meet an opponent who would be able to stop him. This pill gathering was really going to be an intense fight. When the first rays of morning sunlight scattered down the next and broke through the darkness that encompassed the land, Holy Pill City instantly began to boil. All eyes would truly focus on Holy Pill City today. Everyone across the Central Plains would focus their eyes here, awaiting to see who would be able to stand out among the alchemist geniuses from all over the Du-Chi continent. The champion would undoubtedly be a child blessed by the heavens. Every champion of the pill gathering would leave behind a well-known reputation in the Du-Chi continent's history without exception. Hence, the value of the pill gathering had been magnified by many times. Whoever could become the final champion would definitely be able to add a mark to the history of the Du-Chi continent in the future. That glory was enough to cause anyone to become crazy about. After all, Who alive wish to be common? Creak. A door to a room within the pill tower was suddenly opened. At the same time, a skinny figure slowly stepped out of it, after which he appeared in front of the eyes of the little fairy doctor's group, already waiting outside. Today, Xiao Yan was wearing a purple-colored alchemist robe that the pill tower had specifically gave him. There was a tier badge that the pill tower had issued on his chest. On the badge were 7 purple gold stars that were emitting bright lusters. This clothing was the most ceremonious clothes that Xiao Yan had worn in many years. From this, one could understand the position of the pill gathering in the hearts of the alchemists. A smile flashed across the little fairy doctor's eyes as she studied Xiao Yan. He appeared a little handsome as well as free and easy in his alchemist robes. This was the first time that she had seen Xiao Yan wearing such a formal outfit. However, it needed to be said that the current Xiao Yan looked really good. Xiao Yan gently arranged his clothes, after which he glanced at the little fairy doctor and the rest. He smiled and said, "Let's go." He took the lead to shift his footsteps after he spoke and walked out of the large hall. After which the little fairy doctor and the rest wisely smiled and swiftly followed. The pill gathering was the most noble gathering in the hearts of alchemists. Today, the gathering many alchemists admired and had gone crazy for finally parted its curtains. Xiao Yan had waited 3 years for this day. The eastern wind had arrived. It was time to flow with the wind. The location of pill gathering was in the northern part of the inner region. It had already been filled by a terrifying crowd of people for a few days. Hence, by the time Xiao Yan's group had arrived, they only saw a densely packed, endless sea of human heads. An earth-shaking noise charged to the sky, after which it transformed into a terrifying sonic wave that spread apart. One was able to clearly hear it within a 50-kilometer radius. Xiao Yan's group flashed and appeared on top of some buildings. Their eyes looked around them. Only then did they discover that this place was an enormous 10,000-foot large square. The air above this open ground had many stone platforms suspended in it. The stone platforms had a faint light spreading out from them. From the looks of it, the platforms appeared quite mysterious. Those stone platforms are the final seats of the competitors. Ye Zhong pointed at the stone platforms floating in the air as he laughed. They were the focus of tens of thousands of eyes. The final seats? Xiao Yan lifted his eyebrows when he heard this. KK, the pill gathering is an extremely grand event. It is impossible for everyone to participate in this gathering to possess the qualification to step onto those platforms. Before entering the competition ground, there are, strictly speaking, 2 selection hurdles. Ye Zhong smiled, after which he pointed out an enormous square. He asked, "Do you see that deep gray-colored space there?" Xiao Yan's eyes followed the direction Ye Zhong was pointing and did indeed see a patch of deep gray space. When he looked carefully, he finally discovered that this space had been forcefully distorted and formed by someone. The interior of the distorted space was filled with a kind of deep gray vapor that could block one's sight. The basic requirement for one to participate in the pill gathering is for one to reach the Tier 5 alchemist level. That deep gray-colored space is the first hurdle. It is also known as the fantasy realm hurdle. That deep gray vapor is something created from the body of the magical beast, known as the fantasy soul beast. Not only is it able to block one's sight, but it is even able to hinder spiritual perception. Additionally, that space itself has another mystery within it. That space is filled with similar things, causing it to appear just like a maze. One will lose one's sense of direction after entering it, and end up lost within. Those who fail to walk out of it within the allocated time will lose the right to participate in the competition. Ye Zhong smiled as he explained the first hurdle. Xiao Yan slowly nodded. A strange expression flashed across his eyes. This pill-gathering selection methods were extraordinary. Once one passes through this environmental hurdle, one possesses the qualification to enter the pill realm. Ye Zhong's expression had clearly become a lot more serious when he mentioned the pill realm. Pill realm? I mentioned to you some days ago that all the competitors will enter a strange place after the pill gathering begins. That strange place is the Pill Realm. Yezhong nodded and slowly explained. The Pill Realm is a space. It is rumored that an elite Dao Sheng from the Pill Tower created it long ago. However, for some reason, the Pill Realm gradually became ruined. However, the Pill Realm is definitely a treasure ground that a countless number of alchemists dream of. There are tons of natural treasures and rare medicinal ingredients that one would have difficulty finding in the outside world there. The alchemists who have the qualification to enter it will be given a list. The list will record some rare medicinal ingredients. All of you will need to rely on your own abilities to obtain all of the medicinal ingredients within the Pill Realm. Only then can you exchange them for a spatial stone at the exit area. After that, you can leave the Pill Realm and participate in the final competition. The stone platforms in the sky are there for the people who have successfully completed this final hurdle. Not everyone has the qualification to step into them. It is indeed worthy of being the Pill Gathering, Xiao Yan gently nodded and praised. After these 2 rounds of selection, it would be possible to eliminate those who had come to make up the numbers. Those who passed through the selection and remained would be the true elite of this Pill Gathering. The Pill Tower will usually not intervene with whatever happens in the Pill Realm, so as long as you are stealthy, no one will come to know about it. Although this kind of selection is extremely harsh, reality is even more merciless than the competition. If one is unable to even pass this kind of test, how can one survive on the continent and become a true alchemist guru? Yezhong slightly smiled and softly said, Therefore, if you meet Chun Xian from the profound Zhuan sect in the Pill Realm, you can just attack as you like. Xiao Yan smiled. A cold glint flashed across his dark black eyes. That Chun Xian had sold information about Xiao Yan to the people from the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yan needed to resolve this grudge. Gong! A loud and clear gong suddenly resounded over area while Xiao Yan and Yezhong were chatting. The gong sound spread in a mighty manner. Even the earth-shaking noise was suppressed by it. This open ground became much quieter after the gong appeared. Innumerable eyes emitted a swoosh sound as they paused on the towering stone stage on the eastern side of the square. That place would be the spot where the upper echelons of the Pill Tower would appear. Wave after wave of the sound of rushing wind suddenly appeared soon after the gong was rang. Immediately, the space above the stone stage slightly distorted. Over 10 figures slowly appeared there. Xiao Yan's eyes swept over the dozen-plus human figures, after which they paused on the 3 human figures in the middle. Among the 3 of them, Xiao Yan had already seen one of the giant heads of the Pill Tower, Xuan'er. On his left and right sides were 2 existences that he could not detect any aura from. The old man on the left had dark skin. His face was tensed up, giving him a stern, no-joke feeling. His eyes were just like bolts of lightning, piercing one's soul to the point where it felt painful. The one on the right caused Xiao Yan to feel extremely surprised because she was a beautiful woman in a cheongsam. Although Xiao Yan was certain that she was not younger than Xuan'er and the other man, her appearance was similar to that of a 30-year-old woman. Her expression was indifferent, containing a faint charm that had been deposited over the years. It was the first time that Xiao Yan had seen the dark, old man and that beautiful woman. However, from the way these 2 appeared beside Xuan'er, it was obvious that these 2 should be the other 2 giant heads of the Pill Tower. The entire crowd had become much quieter following the appearance of these 3 people. The endless humans turned their gazes, which contained all sorts of emotion, to these 3 people, the 3 great heads of the Pill Tower. Forget about the Central Plains. These names were considered truly renowned across the entire Du Qi continent. The 3 of them were usually existences that existed in legend. Now that they had revealed themselves, many people were in disbelief. KK, the old Mei Xuan'er, shall represent the Pill Tower here, by welcoming all the alchemists who have come here. During the time that follows, this place shall be a stage to display your skill. A white-haired Xuan'er slowly stepped forward. His warm voice clearly sounded beside everyone's ears. The open ground was completely silent. Regardless of how rebellious or fierce one could only control himself at this moment. No one dared to test these people even a little. After all, the three people on the stone stage were not far from peak existences on this continent. Everyone has traveled a great distance in order to hurry here. The old me shall not waste everyone's time here. Keiki, the pill gathering shall happen like it has in the past. It will be divided into 3 stages. Firstly, Xiao Yan quietly listened to Xuan Kongzi's introduction of the pill gathering selection. He discovered that it was similar to what Ye Zhong had mentioned. Clearly, these rules had been the standard rules of all pill gatherings. As long as one passes these 3 selections, the last one standing will be the champion of this pill gathering. Xuan Kongzi looked at the sea of people that had formed a ripple due to the excitement of the word champion. He involuntarily smiled and said, "The champion this time around will not only be able to obtain the position of the potential successor of the Pill Tower's giant head, but will also be able to obtain a scroll containing a soul training method from ancient times. It will only be a matter of time for him or her to advance to 8th or 9th tier." Clamor! Xuan Kongzi's words had just sounded when the densely packed sea of people immediately let out a soul-stirring roar. The eyes of a countless number of alchemists had turned red at this moment. Tier 8? Tier 9? This legendary level appeared to be as far from them as the heavens and the earth. If they were to obtain that ancient soul training method, this gap would undoubtedly be pulled closer. This possessed a fatal allure to all alchemists. Even Xiao Yan was unable to ignore this kind of attraction. After Xuan Kongzi uttered those words, his breathing had quietly become a lot rougher. He clearly understood just how rare and precious a soul training method of the ancient times was. It would not be overboard to describe that kind of treasure as priceless. "I must make an attempt for this champion position no matter what." Xiao Yan tightly clenched his fist. A heat flashed across his dark black eyes. He was unconcerned about the status of the potential to be a giant head successor. However, this soul training method was something that he could not afford to easily ignore, because he clearly understood that if he wished to become a Tier 9 alchemist, the soul training method was something that he must not lack. Therefore, no matter what, he would have to put in all his effort just for this scroll of spiritual training alone. Xuan Kongzi looked at the eyes below, which had suddenly become blood red from the tall stage. He slightly smiled, looked at the sky before finally waving his sleeves. An invisible ripple spread, striking empty space and forming waves of long gong sounds. "Time is up. The competitors who are Tier 5 and above, please enter the first hurdle, the Soul Fantasy Realm." Xuan Kongzi's finger suddenly pointed to the enormous square. The deep gray-colored space swiftly twisted, forming parts of a strange world and giving it a profound appearance. Bang! Xuan Kongzi's voice had just sounded when numerous human figures suddenly rushed out of the endless sea of people. They acted like locusts as they rushed to the sky from all directions, after which all of them entered the distorted space. Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air as he watched the human figures entering the distorted space like a storm. He slowly stepped forward. "Do your best!" Xiao Yan smiled when he heard the cheer from the little fairy doctor's group. After which, he suddenly stomped on the ground. His body transformed into a black figure that rushed into the deep gray distorted space without any hesitation in front of many gazes. The intense competition of the pill gathering had officially begun at this moment. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Xuan Kongzi on the tall stage nodded as he watched the human figures entering the fantasy realm like locusts in transit. Both of his hands were inserted into his sleeves as he faintly said, "The pill gathering this time around has become a little interesting. It is unexpected that even some famous old fellows have also come." The 3,000 burning flame is far from what an ordinary heavenly flame can compare with. It is quite tempting to these people. Naturally, they would want to come and join in the fun. That dark-skinned old man beside Xuan Kongzi raised his eyebrows. His stern, lightning bolt-like eyes swept over the human figures rushing into the fantasy realm hurdle as he commented, "The waves behind push away those at the front." Some of the members from the younger generation are not weaker than them. Even if they participate, it is likely that they will only end up with ashen faces. The Cheongsam-clad pretty woman by the side smiled as she added her thoughts. Xuan Kongzi grinned and nodded. He fondled his beard and said, "The younger generation this time has a number of outstanding people. However, the thing I am most curious about is just what extent will Xiao Yan reach." Xiao Yan, Yao Chun's disciple? The dark-skinned old man was startled. His eyes immediately glanced at the pretty woman by his side. Yao Chen. The pretty woman was a little startled. She had been in a retreat during these years. Other than important matters like sealing the 3,000 burning flames, she would usually not show herself. One could say that she was the one who kept the lowest profile among the 3 giant heads of the Pill Tower. Even some people who had just entered the Pill Tower for a short while might not even be aware of her existence. Many people thought that there had not been any woman giant heads in the history of the Pill Tower. However, only those with experience were aware that the first woman giant head of the Pill Tower had already appeared before Chao Ying. However, she was much older than Chao Ying. This mysterious, pretty woman was once considered a truly renowned person across the Duqi continent. Her name was not the least bit weaker than the other 2 giant heads. Although she had been in a retreat during these years and had not been involved in any matters, her eyes revealed an unknown glint within them when she heard of this distant name that she had difficulty forgetting. Based on what Xiao Yan said, Yao Chen has currently landed in the hands of the Hall of Souls. Once the pill gathering is over, we might perhaps help this old fellow if it is possible. After all, no matter what, he did our Pill Tower a great favor back then. Xuan Kongzi slowly informed them. The face of the pretty woman slightly changed upon hearing what had happened. Her rippleless, old well-like mentality had begun to fluctuate. Her face sank as she said, "Who asked that old fellow to act great back then? He knew that the Hall of Souls had targeted him, yet he still dared to roam around. He deserves this kind of fate." "You may speak in such an easy matter, but who don't know that you are the one who is most worried about that old fellow? You have quietly dispatched quite a number of people to inquire about Yao Chen during these years. The 2 of us know." Xuan Kongzi sighed. "Who cares if he has died?" The pretty woman's eyebrows became vertical, causing her to appear mighty even without being angry. However, these words appeared to lack any backing when they landed in the ears of Xuan Kongzi and the other person. However, the 2 of them clearly understood her stubborn character. They could only helplessly shake their heads. The many elders from the Pill Tower looked at each other after the argument of these 3. All of them wisely chose to act like they heard nothing. "Let me meet this little fellow once the pill gathering is over. I have heard that the members of the Hall of Souls are also planning on capturing him. No matter what, he is also his disciple." The pretty woman calmed down after the silence of Xuan Kongzi and their companion. Her eyes dimmed as she spoke with a complicated expression in her eyes. Xuan Kongzi and the dark-skinned man faced each other upon hearing her words. They nodded, but did not add anything else. Xiao Yan clearly sensed the tear badge on his chest emit a strange ripple while his body was charging into the deep gray, distorted space. Under this spreading ripple, a suction force erupted from the distorted space when his body touched it, sucking Xiao Yan into it. This sudden suction force caused Xiao Yan's eyes to be dazzled. The next time he regained his sight, he discovered that he was already standing in the deep gray, mysterious space. This space was permeated by a thick, deep gray vapor. One could not see even half a meter in any direction with one's eyes. Moreover, a slight distortion would appear when one's sight slid by some areas. Clearly, this place should be the so-called fantasy realm hurdle. Xiao Yan's feet remained planted on the deep gray vapor. He did not charge around randomly. Instead, he continued to quietly stand there. His eyes were slightly shut as his majestic spiritual strength slowly spread out like waves of water. The deep gray vapor clearly suppressed one's soul. This was something Xiao Yan had heard Ye Zhong mention before. Hence, he did not feel too surprised. This kind of suppression also had a limit. With the current power of his soul, He was easily able to take note of the situation around despite the hindrance of the vapor. However, the distance his spiritual strength could reach had been greatly reduced. The spreading of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength allowed him to sense the ripples formed by the surrounding deep gray vapor. There should be new competitors continuously entering. This is a little similar to the energy tide in the Heavenly Eye mountain range. However, that formed naturally, while this place is a maze created from using human strength to distort space. This method to trap a person is even more troublesome to deal with. Xiao Yan revealed an expression contemplation. This place should have been formed by the experts from the Pill Tower. They probably used a great amount of strength to distort space. The distorted space was massive. If one were to randomly barge in, one would definitely lose one's sense of direction, or even end up being trapped here. No matter how complicated this fantasy realm hurdle was, it was after all something that was man-made. If one wished to successfully charge out of this area, one would have to clearly identify the traces of spatial distortion within it. As long as one followed the bending pathway formed by the distorted space, one would be able to successfully walk out of this fantasy realm. Of course, this might be easy to explain, but it was quite hard to do. Under this strange, permeating vapor, one's sight and spiritual strength were all firmly suppressed. It would be difficult if one wished to clearly identify the complicated spatial traces in this situation, where one was essentially blind for an ordinary alchemist. Fortunately, Xiao Yan was not in this ordinary category. With the strength of his current soul, even some Tier 7 high-grade alchemists were unable to compare with him. Although the soul was being suppressed due to the gray-colored vapor, it wasn't enough to stop one from dealing with this so-called fantasy realm hurdle. Swoosh, swoosh. Xiao Yan faintly smiled upon hearing waves of wind being split apart a short distance away. By relying on his spiritual perception, he watched quite a number of alchemists randomly barge around and finally end up trapping themselves in some distorted space, unable to free themselves. Xiao Yan quietly spread his spiritual strength. He placed both of his hands behind him as his feet gently stepped through empty space. He leisurely followed the route that his spiritual strength had probed and slowly walked forward. This distorted space was unexpectedly vast. Adding the size of it to the many spatial folds within it caused this place to appear like a maze. If one were absent-minded, one would end up barging into the distorted spatial folds and end up losing the qualification to continue the test. The space was vast and endless. However, Xiao Yan did not feel any anxiety because of this. His footsteps continued at a steady pace. He had witnessed many competitors charge into spatial folds because of their momentarily recklessness. Hence, he naturally understood that if he were reckless in this kind of place, the fate that would await him would definitely be the miserable one of being knocked out of the competition. Xiao Yan had also met quite a number of genuine experts along the way. The thing that caused his heart to be shocked was that most of these people had detected his spiritual perception. However, they did not come to chat with him. Instead, they all cautiously withdrew far away. Xiao Yan was not surprised that these people withdrew. However, he felt quite speechless in his heart. Most of those alchemists who participated in the pill gathering really did possess great strength. By looking at the situation, he could at the very least tell that quite a number of people were not stopped by this so-called fantasy realm hurdle. Xiao Yan's feet slowly advanced forward in the space which permeated by a deep gray vapor. If he counted the time, he should have already been in this space for an hour or so. Moreover, he could sense the spatial distortion with his spiritual perception become more complicated. At times, he would head in circles in order to avoid the spatial fold that was blocking his path. Tud! Xiao Yan's footsteps gently stepped across some deep gray fog. A thought suddenly flashed in his heart. He raised his heart and looked into the fog a short distance away. He could see waves of ripples suddenly appear at that spot. Immediately, an elderly figure slowly walked closer. Xiao Yan's heart suddenly quivered when he saw the face of that elderly figure. Teacher? Xiao Yan's eyes were startled as he looked at the smiling old man in front of him. That familiar face was Yao Lao, who had been captured by the Hall of Souls. Yao Lao stood a short distance from Xiao Yan and smiled, after which he beckoned Xiao Yan with his hand. Xiao Yan's foot almost uncontrollably took a step forward as he looked at the friendly and familiar face. A sense of danger suddenly appeared in Xiao Yan's heart as he lifted his foot forward. His foot was also stilled by him, after which he inhaled a deep breath of air, and his heart recovered its clarity. It's an illusionary figure. The deep regions of this fantasy realm hurdle are able to form illusions based on what one was thinking in one's heart. Xiao Yan frowned. He looked at that elderly figure. It was a long while later before he softly sighed. With a wave of his sleeve, a wind surged out and scattered the elderly figure. The hidden spatial fold behind the figure was revealed. A strange black vapor faintly permeated these spatial folds. This fantasy realm hurdle is indeed risky. Xiao Yan's eyes focused on the strange black vapor. He understood that the appearance of the illusionary figure should be related to this thing. The caution in Xiao Yan's heart was once again raised as he shook his head. He could sense that this place was not far from the exit of the fantasy realm. His spiritual strength spread, and once again found the spatial trace in front of him. He moved his feet and slowly walked into the distance. Xiao Yan saw quite a number of illusions of people he had thought of during his journey. Xun'er, Kai Lin, Xiao Zhan, Yun, etc. They were all people he had deep memories of. However, with the lesson he had learned from the last time, Xiao Yan no longer felt the least bit absent-minded because of the appearance of these illusory figures this time around. No matter how vivid those illusory figures were, he only felt a little nostalgic as he looked at them before waving his sleeves, turning around, and continuing on. Numerous illusions appeared along the way. However, they did not cause Xiao Yan to slow. Following his firm footsteps, the permeating deep gray, dense fog in front of him suddenly became fainter around half an hour later. Immediately, a 10-foot-large, distorted black hole appeared a short distance in front of him. This was the spatial tunnel that led to the Pill Realm,